What's up, guys? Hockey season is here, and puck time is almost here. But you got Andrew, of course, and Carmine with you to break down some games and just go over some stuff. Carm, it's been too long since we've been on a show together, man. How are you?
I'm good. I just want everyone to know, Andrew, first of all, that I was here on time. I was ready to go. But I get it. If you're a pet owner, dogs have to be walked, pets have to be fed. So sometimes we're going to run a little behind. But yes, Aaron, I think Aaron was commenting, why don't we ever start on time? This year, we're making a concerted effort, Andrew. 11 a.m. every weekday on time, unless one of our guests, like the Prez, has a meltdown and doesn't show up on time. But other than that, um, I'm looking forward to it, man. NHL starts our first puck time show, guys. For those tuning in, will be next Tuesday. I know the NHL season starts on Friday. It's a 1 o'clock game in Prague, a Saturday game in Prague, and then a Sunday, Monday are pretty much teams getting ready for the full season to start, and 3 games on Tuesday night. So we're going to discuss all 3 of those games, Andrew. And then the full slates start after that. Let's hope the NHL. I haven't looked at the schedule yet, long term, but have they at least balanced the schedule this year? Do you know? Like, are we going to go from those away from those
Same
14
old.
game nights and then 1 game the next night? It's just absolutely horrible scheduling. I get it, the NHL. I'm not sure if they set it up for like Taylor Swift, like they do at the KC games, so she could attend the games. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But I'm ready for hockey.
Yeah, man, and Carm, it's funny when hockey season ends, and even like when the Stanley Cup Finals are going on, it's almost like we've been doing so much hockey talk on Puck Time and different shows. We're ready for it to end, but after the summer and when the weather starts to get a little bit colder, and um, you know, October is here, then you really kind of feel like it's hockey season. Um, Aaron, I get it, and he's not talking about Puck Time, Carm. He's talking about I've been doing shows the last week and a half, and we've been starting at like 3:10, 3:15. I might as well start calling it a 3:15 show, but hey,
No,
Aaron, at least
well,
I've
you can.
barely broken my streak. I've barely broken my streak, and with puck time being at 11 a.m. Eastern, I'm determined to be here at 3 p.m. Eastern every single weekday. And it's going to be more casual because, unfortunately, as Carm knows, because he hears the producers in our ear, um, Puck Time is a lot more of a time-driven show. It's like a quick picks given show. This is going to be a lot more relaxed. And I got to shout out Aaron because, Carm, I'm up like 3.5 units with NHL preseason. Aaron is kicking ass with NHL preseason. So shout out to him for that. But it's nothing about
Awesome.
puck time. Yeah, it's nothing about puck time. But overall,
It's still
Carm,
good. Listen,
yeah,
and Andrew, at the end of the day, listen, at the end of the day, as a collective, you know what I mean? Not just Puck Time, but the other shows in which I respect the guys on the shows as well too. Guys like Alex V. Smith, and Ian. You want these people to win. What kind of a human being wants other people's to lose, other than books? Books would love people to
yeah.
lose as long as they're looking at their bottom line. But as a collective, the more info people who tune into this show, tune into other shows, the more info they can get. And yes, obviously these shows are put together. We want people to come to Wager Talk. We want people to look at any of the daily packages we have up. But we never force anyone to buy anything. The idea is becoming a smarter, better, maybe taking a little bit of what you say, a little bit of what I say, whether you agree with something, whether you don't disagree with it, see if it mirrors anything that other people are saying, and put together a formula to try and beat the books at the end of the day. That's what it is about. It is about people as a collective trying to beat the books at the end of the day, right? So,
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
and sort of negating that, you know, that, uh, that thought that, oh, people work for the books and they post this info because the books are paying them to have people take the wrong sides. Books aren't paying people to take the wrong sides. I'm not at that level. I think, with under 10K in followers, that I can influence anyone by posting a free play, um, which is what the books want you to post, anyways. I'm going off on a tangent here, Andrew. It's only the first show of the season.
That means we're back. That means that we're back. And look, Carm, we've got no time restraint, but we'll make it quick. We'll just go over a couple teams and stuff. But we've got, unfortunately, we're not going live on my Twitter right now, which bothers me because I changed my profile picture yesterday. And when you do that, you lose your premium account for like a day or two. And when you lose your premium account, you can't go live on Twitter. So right now we are only live on YouTube, guys. But I'll post it afterwards for people to be able to see on Twitter as well. But we've got Robert in here. We've got Nebraska Knows. You know he's always in here as well. Of course, Aaron's in here and a couple other guys watching as well. When I go to the window with my money, yeah, exactly. The books don't want us to win, Carm. We all know that. But one thing I wanted to ask you, because we're going to keep it light. We got a few teams we want to look at. But one thing I would say, and you and I both have kind of talked about kind of taking it easy as an approach to start the season off. But, you know, it's very similarly to NBA. Would you say that sometimes it's a good thing for the teams that didn't make a lot of trades and stuff in the offseason? Like, I think there's so much hype that surrounds teams that made moves. But sometimes the teams that made the fewest moves can have success too, right?
Yeah, no, I get your point. There's definitely, and here the thing is, and we've seen it in the NFL as well too. I don't think you can get a lot out of what goes on in the preseason. Last year, you definitely couldn't because teams were resting starters one game. And losing 7-1, and then having their starters in the second game and winning 6-2. You really couldn't get a feel for how teams were going to play unless you knew their lineups ahead of time. And the NFL has done this as well too, resting a lot of players heading into it's the injury thing. The injury bug last year hit the NHL, hit some teams. It's definitely hit the NFL. To mention that one more time, and it has. And one of the teams I'm going to discuss a little later on, Andrew, because I'm going to talk about 3 season point totals, but one of them is going to be the New Jersey Devils, and I'll talk about the injuries they faced last year. But they're the perfect example of a team that, looking at what they did in the offseason and looking at, a brand new coach as well too. A few players out, some key players coming in, and players returning from injuries that missed portions or a great part of last year, and that all factors into the learning curve at the beginning of the first 2-3 weeks of the NHL season, Andrew. Because if you take if you take a Andrew, if you take a look at what's expected of teams over the course of the year, it's an 82 game schedule. That could very well happen, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen right out of the gate. And sometimes we get tunnel vision, and you look at a team and you say, case in point, I'm going to mention the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm not going to make fun of them, Andrew. The Toronto Maple Leafs season point total last year, 104.5 points. They come up, or 105.5. They come up short. I think they finished with 104. This year, it's if you check different books, you can get them anywhere from 101 to 102.5. And you look at the changes that the teams have made. You get tunnel vision. You think, oh, brand new coach. This guy is good. He won the Stanley Cup in 2019 with the St. Louis Blues. He's going to straighten them out. Does it mean it's going to straighten them out in the first 3 weeks of the season or over the course of the season? I'm the guy who wanted Pierre Maguire, Pierre. What's his name? Andrew down in Florida, the coach. I wanted fired.
Paul Maurice.
About
Paul Maurice.
Paul Maurice. Pierre Maguire. That's the guy I can't stand on NHL because he is like Chris Collinsworth. Every player that he's announcing in a game is a superstar. But yeah, Paul Maurice, I wanted him fired about 8 times in the last 2 years. And what does he have? He has a Stanley Cup final and a Stanley Cup championship in 2 years. So what do I know about coaches? But there is a learning curve, I think, with teams under a new coach and training staff. So we'll see what comes of the Leafs. I won't be discussing them, but I think you will be.
Yeah, I mentioned them today on Wager Talk today. And look, I gave out the under, and Carm, you, without even knowing it, just said a lot of the reasons why I liked the under. It's because it's an 82-game preseason once again for the Maple Leafs, right? I think we can agree on that. They've been good in the regular season, but I think what Berube is going to instill with this team is that he's going to sacrifice some regular season games for them playing the right way come playoff time. The interesting thing about hockey compared to other sports is that the game is way different in the playoffs versus regular season. Sure, in the NBA, maybe there's more defense played. Maybe they use the shot clock a lot more. But let's be honest, in the NHL, the play style of the hockey that they're playing is just way different. And so I think it's hard for them to kind of turn that on if they play a different way. If you go from playing first to 4 goals wins through the first 82 games of the season, and then you go into the playoffs and it's first to 3 goals wins, it's a little bit of a difference. But one thing I will say, though, it's kind of funny, is the Leafs picked up a bunch of key defensemen, right? But I saw a breakdown talking about this, and I couldn't agree more. Which was what was their problem last year in the playoffs, Carm? Was it offense or defense? They add all these defensemen. They don't add any forwards. If you ask me, in that series against Boston, it was offense that was their problem. They scored like 1 goal a game in that series. So it's interesting to me. But I like the under. But it's funny. I said on the Wager Talk today, I like the under, but I think they're going to have success this season. So I just like the identity factor, but there might be a little bit of time that it takes for it to kind of happen, right?
Yeah. And you sent me before you went on Wager Talk today, 3 of the things you were going to discuss on the show. And I said, well, I think you'll get the last 2 right, maybe not the first one. And the first one was the Leafs won, but I haven't really dived into the Leafs one to really break down, not only their schedule and back to backs and 3 and 4 nights and things like that, which I think come into it. I think as a whole, and maybe not early on, is that Craig Berube is going to make a difference for this team. One of the biggest things under Sheldon Keefe last year, Andrew, and and then he changed his system towards the end of the season to try and become a better defensive team leading into the playoffs against the Bruins. Like you said, the offense completely dried up. And there was talk of maybe Austin Matthews was injured. He was sick in one of the games. But, with that said, they dropped points against teams, and you always discuss it. They played to the level of their competition. They play well against the good teams and bad against the bad teams. And there's no excuse for that. Losing games to the Chicago Blackhawks, home and away, 4 important points is, losing games to the Arizona Coyotes, now the Utah whatever
HC.
hockey team, whatever they're called.
HC,
Those
yeah.
are games. Yeah, those are games that those points at the end of the season matter. It's all the difference between winning the division and facing a wild card team, because it's been the same rinse and repeat. The Leafs finished second, the Leafs finished third. They play either Boston, they play Tampa Bay. If they beat one of them, they have to play the other one. And then Florida came into the mix with their team the last couple of years. And the Leafs have remained stagnant, not winning the division. They need to win the division to make it past the first round for only the second time in 18 or 19 years, to make it to the third round, the semifinals, to make it to the finals of the conference finals, to make it to the Stanley Cup. They need to win their division. If they don't win their division, it becomes that much harder on them, because they've got to go on the road and win on the road. And it's something that they've proven that they can't do in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They may be able to do it short term, but over the course of an NHL playoffs, you need to win on the road. And there's no team that, Andrew, you can point out better on that than the Carolina Hurricanes the last few years.
Good point.
Fantastic team at home in the playoffs, can't win on the road in the playoffs, and it cost them making it to the Cup finals. So we'll see if Berube has this team thinking that, hey, I know it's the Anaheim Ducks coming to town tonight, and they finished with 58 points 2 years ago and 59 points last year, but we need to beat them.
Good point. Good
And maybe
point.
beat them grind them into the ice. You need to win those games. There are no free points in the NHL. And when you drop points,
Yeah.
it costs you the playoffs. And all you got to do is look at last year's standings, guys, and look at the teams in the Eastern Conference that missed the playoffs. Uh, I would have rather the Detroit Red Wings, who finished with 91 points, the same amount of points as the Washington Capitals. I would have rather had Detroit in the playoffs because they would have at least given the in the first round, given made a series of it. Washington was it four and done? They were miserable. They made it into the playoffs and they didn't last. They're
Gentleman sweep, I think.
um, yeah, gentlemen sweep. Yeah, okay. And
Yeah.
the Pittsburgh Penguins finishing on 88 points, finishing three back. You know what I mean? The New Jersey Devils, with all their injuries, missing the playoffs for the 10th time in 12 years. So, but a lot of injuries on that team. So every game has its importance, and you look at the Western Conference as well too, Andrew. It's the difference between home ice and missing home ice as well too. When you're playoff bound, but you're still dropping points.
Exactly. And the thing is, Carm, is that one thing I will say, and about my point, is that the East is only getting better and the Atlantic Division is only getting better. So I couldn't agree more that I think that what you said about Berube, and we'll move on from the Leafs in a second, but you're right. I mean, when the Ducks come to town, the Coyotes, some of these bottom feeding teams, but one thing that I know for sure you'll agree with me on, your Sabres got better. The Senators got better, especially with Allmark. The Red Wings are ready to go now, or else the Weiser plan is done because they have Tarasenko, Kane, all these guys now, right? My Habs, you talk about the injury bug. We have the worst injury luck ever. I think it's the last 3 years, the most man hours lost. Patrick Laine hasn't even played a regular season game yet, man. And an AHL player sticks his knee out and he's done for almost the year. That's how I'm feeling as a Habs fan right now. But the Atlantic Division got better, I think, and that's an issue probably for other teams. That's why I would potentially look at some of the top teams like Florida and Toronto under, because I could see Ottawa and Buffalo and Detroit kind of being pesky a little bit and maybe being upsets in some of those. But the Atlantic Division is going to be an absolute massacre. But let's talk about another division, the Devils. A very, very disappointing season, to put it lightly. If you ask Jack Hughes, he said, we sucked last year. I love Jack Hughes in the media, Carm. He is the most blunt, and like he just acts like he doesn't give you the typical hockey answers, which I like. You know, he's just very like, yeah, it wasn't good. It feels like this Devils team is either really good or really bad, and there's nowhere in between. They're very hyped coming into this season, but you know as well as I do, they added some pieces, and you like what they've done here coming into this year.
Yeah, I look at the point total, and this is why when Andrew, when we discuss like point totals, and I'm going to talk about three of them. You have to, especially if you're going to invest. Like I have two or three books that I use strictly for futures, and I put future bets in them. A majority of them come through, obviously football and European football specifically, because I find odds in Europe that I absolutely love, and I can sit on these wagers for a year. Some people don't want to sit on a plus 175 or a plus 350 and wait a whole year, but that's if you're playing with like a limited bankroll. I have just a futures bankroll. So when you used to joke around with me, oh, Carm, you're going on another vacation this year? Well, I'll tell you, Andrew, no word of a lie. The vacations, the trips I take my wife on, or the ones I plan, are based on or are funded by my future bets. I win them, I cash them out, and you make those life hold memories. You can't make memories. You can always make memories, Andrew, or you can always earn money later on. You can't make memories or do things in your 60s and 70s that you can do in your 40s and 30s. So I'm past those years, but I'm somewhere in between. But
I
I
hear
want
you,
to get
man.
back.
I hear you.
I don't want to go off on a tangent here once again. But you look at the Devils, and we're talking about futures. The Leafs' future is 102.5. The Leafs made the playoffs last season. The Devils are 100.5. That's one win over the course of 82 games. The difference they're saying between the Leafs win total and the New Jersey's points total here is 2 points, one win. Now, why? because New Jersey has an upside. They had a terrible season last year, but let's look at what happened to the New Jersey Devils last year. Goaltending, number one problem for this team last year, along with injuries, which is a good 1A close number two. Goaltending. Their goaltending was horrific last year. They have a better goaltending duo. Jacob Markstrom. He may not warm the cockles of your hearts, boys, because everyone thinks this guy is not a playoff goalie, but he is a good goalie, and he is a perfect number one for this team for a couple reasons. Number one, their defense as a whole will be better this year. Dougie Hamilton back. He's looked good in preseason thus far. He missed pretty much the entire season last year with that pectoral injury or have you, but he's back and he looks good. Luke Hughes missed the beginning of the season, the first, 4 weeks of the season with an injury. This team had injuries throughout the season last year. They make some good additions to the team this year. Who did they add? They add Brett Pesce. He's a solid defenseman. He's going to help them out. And the forwards, guys who are going to score. The only problem I have, Andrew, when I'm thinking about taking the over 105.5 here, 100.5 with the Devils, is the new coach, Sheldon Keefe. How do they work under his system? Because if you look at the preseason, and Andrew, I don't want to talk about, again, I want to preface the fact and point out the importance of not overreacting to the preseason.
Right.
When you're looking at it, these teams want to get into the regular season injury free. But the one thing is Sheldon Keefe. How does this team play in front of him? It's a system. He's not, he's proven to be an adequate coach with the Leafs. They had a ton of talent, which was enough to get them into the playoffs, enough to get them over that 100 points. But again, that team had a lot of talent. The guys for New Jersey need to click, and you know who the guys are,
Yeah.
Andrew, on this New Jersey team. So, sort of looking at them, I had it written down. You look at the guys on this team and whether they're going to be able to click together. This is a team last year that struggled at home in the first period. So for the longest time, we were making money talking about that, all the time. But you look at guys like Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, who missed part of last season as well too. Jesper Bratt, Timo Meyer, Dawson Mercer. These are guys who need to have good seasons for this team to prosper. And then the only thing that worries me is the coach. I'll be honest with you. I get it. They have to adjust under this coach, and this is why, if you're up on a team, and I'm going to throw it to you, Andrew, in a second. You can give me a rebuttal. If you're up on a team and you like a team to go over 105 points, that does not mean that out of the gate this team is going to be good.
Yeah.
Because there's still that adjustment period. So you can look at the New Jersey team in the adjustment period and say, okay, I'm going to be cautious the first 2 to 3 weeks with New Jersey, and stay away from that tunnel vision of your bet at the end of the season, and think about your bets at the beginning of the season. There's no better way of looking at it than the Edmonton Oilers, because I had tunnel vision at the beginning of the season with the Edmonton Oilers. I'm like, this is a good team. This is a team I think is going to go far in the playoffs. But they started off with a horrendous start to the NHL season. They were like 4-12 or something like that. And then they make the coaching change, the same players, tweak the system, and all of a sudden they are the best team in the NHL points-wise, win-wise, for the rest of the NHL season.
Unbelievable, man.
But the problem is that the tunnel vision loses you so much money at the beginning that you're now trying to recuperate it the rest of the season. And this is why I say, just don't fall into that tunnel vision trap with any team.
Yeah. And that's one thing, I got to give credit to Prez actually about this. And you mentioned a lot about this with upcoming schedules. And of course, on Puck Time, I do my buy and sell segment. But that's one thing is, like, people love to chase teams, right? So, everybody loves to use the term do, Carm. The do
The
factor is
do.
never a good
Yes.
handicap. It's never a good handicap. But hockey is a very trendy sport. So, before they fired their coach, they were looking horrible. And then when they fired their coach, they turned it around. You wanted to bet on them. So, one thing that my clients can expect and people can expect from me content-wise is that if you see me on a Tuesday betting on a certain team, don't be shocked if on Thursday and Saturday I'm betting on them as well. If you go 2 for 3, you're 67% that week on that team. And the thing for me is that I would get, okay, I won with this team. I got to find a new team to make money on Thursday. Well, why can't this team win 2 in a row? Why can't this team win 3 in a row? So, talking about what Aaron said here, I think, it's a good point, and I think that's what everybody thinks as well about the Devils. But the good news for you, Carm, is that it doesn't matter in the regular season. It matters more
No.
so in the playoffs,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
and look, I don't want to be. I know everyone thinks that I just crap all over the Leafs, but one thing I'm going to say to you about Sheldon Keefe is that he would, whether people believe it or not, and I know the guys over there are all good guys. He's not dealing with any egos anymore. Maybe a little bit with Jack Hughes, but I think you look at Timo Meyer, you look at Nico Hischier, you look at Bratt, you look at some of those guys aren't really egos. So when I look at the lineup, especially the top 3, like Stefan Noesen, Hala, and Palat are going to be a good third line. I don't think that Sheldon Keefe was able to play his third and fourth line as much as he's going to be able to now. The power plays are going to be great because they're going to have 2 great units. Meyer, Hischier, Bratt, Hamilton, Hughes, and then Nason, Mercer, Tatar, Simon Nemec, and Palat, which is good. Brennan Dillon is going to be awesome. Shout out to Brennan Dillon because I had a 5%, yes, a 5% preseason play like a week ago, Carm, and he had 2 goals. A defenseman, if you would have told me that I hit that 5% play because Dillon had 2 goals, I wouldn't have believed you. But, they got a good defensive core, so I'm with you on this team. And then, of course, when we're talking about futures, it's important to talk about everybody around them. And I think when you look at the Metropolitan Division, it's going to be a top-heavy division, wouldn't you say? So when you're looking at a team, not only can we talk up on this team, but we can also talk down on the teams around them. I'm looking at Washington. Sure, they got some good goaltending. They're going to be, made some trades. Pittsburgh. I'm an East Coast boy. I love Crosby. It sucks that he's not going to play for any other team the rest of his career, probably. He got 3 Stanley Cups, and it's going to be sad to watch for all of us here in Nova Scotia, Carm, for the next few years for this Pittsburgh team. And you look at the rest of the teams, the Philadelphia Flyers, Matvei Michkov. He's looking unbelievable so far, but it's going to take some time for the Philadelphia Flyers to get it together. Columbus Blue Jackets, going to take time for that team to get it together. So I think that for them, they've got a really good division to take advantage of where it's going to be super top heavy. And that's why they're going to be able to get a lot of their points. And of course, you mentioned it, Markstrom and Jake Allen, a really good duo. So I'm right there with you on that one. Robert says, call me crazy, but the Flyers point total future is 85.5. I think they can get that. Robert, they're going to be scrappy. It's just going to be a matter of consistency for them and not falling into losing streaks. Carm? I feel like they're going to have some bright spots, but they're also going to have some down spots too.
They have one of my favorite coaches, Andrew,
Yeah.
John Tortorella. You know what I mean? The guy's a human soundbite. I love him, and he says what's on his mind. He said about his players. He'll say it about the reporters. He'll say it about management if he has to. The one thing about him is he'll sit players, even if
Yeah.
they're popular players, to get the best out of the team. So they always show up, or he gets them to show up. The problem is the sort of the talent throughout the lineup. You know what I mean? It's not just your top 6 forwards, but it's what you have is just sort of in your bottom 6, and then your defense. So we'll see what happens. And of course, they went through the stuff last year with their goaltending and obviously the leave of absence and one of their goalies with the stuff that went on with the Canadian juniors team and such. But it's always a distraction as a whole for a team. We'll see. what they have this year, but they're when I look at sort of the overall scope of the Eastern Conference, you can pretty much check mark 6 teams that are going to make the playoffs, which basically leaves about 4, maybe 5, but normally it's 4 fighting it out for those last 2 wild card spots. Andrew, really wish the NHL would change their format. I get it, the whole travel in 82 games, it makes it tough, but um, you know, there's teams that miss the playoffs that you would really like to get in, and I get it. Baseball has done it. You don't want to stretch out an 82 game season, but baseball has done it by adding another wild card spot. Why not add a couple wild card spots in the East and West and let 7 and 8 play against 9 and 10 in a short 3 game series? The team with the higher seed gets all 3 games at home, and see what comes of it. What do you think of that? Gary
No, I
Bettman, if you can see over your desk that is like 4 feet high, and you're watching this show, please tell us that's a great idea.
I do like it. And I think it's not fair for some of the teams that are going to finish with a good amount of points, but their division is really competitive, right? Like the Atlantic Division, and then the wild card becomes super competitive, Carm. That's why it's really important to have a good start, like you said, to your season, because you don't want to be in March or April and you're just battling for those last few points. But that's why I think the Metropolitan Division, like the Devils, are going to have such success, because they have a lot of weaker teams around them. Robert, I don't think you're crazy, but I think that the best bet for the Flyers, and Carm, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this one, probably overs. I don't like John Tortorella is going to be happy with the offense this year. I don't think the defense is going to look very good. So I'll take the overs. Michael, I'm not sure I recognize the names. If I do, if I'm forgetting your name, I apologize, but appreciate you being here with Carm and I. Didn't pay attention to offseason at all. Can we sum up Utah shortly? My 2 cents. Of course, Utah formerly being Arizona. Carm, I think that this is the year where they're no longer a laughing stock, no longer a joke. And I know that sounds a bit intense and a bit, maybe a bit harsh, but they actually have a real owner now. They're playing in a real building. They actually have a real hockey team vibe to them. And when you look at some of the upsets that they had last year as big underdogs, as the season progressed, they were getting lower and lower numbers. And when you look at their team, Keller, Hayden, Schmaltz, Logan Cooley, another year under his belt. Dylan Gunther signed that big contract a week or 2 ago. Then, of course, you've got Lawson Krause, Kerfoot, Michelli. I know you like that name, Carm, on the third line there with them. So, and a decent defensive core. I think they're going to be a team that we can still cash underdog tickets on. So that's all I have. Not to put you on the spot, Carm, but do you agree with me on that?
No, I do. To your point of like you don't recognize Michael's name, how do you not recognize his last name, Andrew? Look at the last name. Think about who the Montreal Canadiens' #1 pick in the 1985 draft was, 5th pick overall. It was
What?
Peter Svoboda.
1985 draft.
1985. You weren't even born back then, but 1985, Peter Svoboda drafted #5 overall, #1 pick of the Montreal Canadiens. He went on to also play, I think, for the Philadelphia Flyers, if I remember correctly, and such. But he had a long career in the NHL, Czech player. So there you got. Come on, Andrew. You have to.
Carm,
You have to be in the present. You have to think about the past in order to reflect and build on the future. A lot of these names, you know what I mean? Come on, man.
I'm happy you were able to meet my old man this year, because he's actually closer to your age than I am to your age. So whenever you say stuff like this, you realize that I'm only young still. And you talked about taking vacations at your age and with your wife. My dad just left for Spain today, and he's bringing me back a Barcelona shirt when he comes back. It's all about traveling and enjoying your life. But what I've realized this year, I'm going to try and travel the least amount that I have the last few years. Enjoy hockey, save, and hopefully buy a house next year or 2. That's the plan. But in this market, it's very, very difficult. But I do not recognize that name, but I appreciate him being here. We have 2 more bets that you want to get to, Carm, but the questions are starting to come in here a little bit, and we want to kind of deal with the
I will
questions because
cover
I
one of the I will cover one of the questions with my with this answer or this futures play that I have played. So
okay.
Irish King 97, and then we'll get to Jake Folsom as well too. But Irish King says, "Who are the five best and five worst teams heading into the season?" Well, I'm going to tell you who one of the worst teams is because I'm taking their season point total under, and that is the Anaheim Ducks. Their point total is 70.5 points, 70.5 points. Andrew, so this is a team that, as I mentioned just a while ago, this is a team in the 22-23 season, 58 points. The 23-24 season, 59 points. Now, listen, I get it. It's a youth movement and a rebuilding in Anaheim. They are going to eventually break through. It's not going to happen this year. They might have a slight uptick. At the beginning of last season, they talked about this could be the year that the Anaheim Ducks have a big uptick, that their young guys produce more scoring, produce more points, and the team wins more games. They earned one more point than they did the previous season. I'm not saying that this season is going to be the same and they go to 60 points. I just don't see a road to 70.5 points or 71 that beats it with this team. It's a youth movement there. They're going to be a good team at some point. They're not ready to be a good team now. And the West has a lot of stacked teams, and they play in a conference and a division with a lot of good teams where they're not going to pick up a lot of points from them. So, you look at that. The talk is, between the pipes for this team. John Gibson. Every year we talk about at the trade deadline, they should move John Gibson. They should move it. I don't even know if you can move him this point
Yeah, past
when
the
the trade
prime.
deadline does come, because Andrew, he amongst goalies with 35 or more starts last year, there was 40 goalies who had 35 or more starts last year. He was 27 of those 40 goalies in goals saved above expectancy. That is a drop off. That is not a good number. And he was letting goals. He's just not the. And it's the team that plays in front of you. He's just not an elite goalie. He's a good goalie. I don't think he's a great goalie at this point. So unless a team has massive injuries to their starters goalie wise, in the second half of the season when they're looking for and they're trying to make the playoffs or they're in the playoffs, that's the only time Gibson's going to come into the discussion, or if someone's looking for a good number two. He's not a number one goalie on a playoff bound team, and I just don't see how they're going to get 71 points. So the under 70 and a half points is a definite play for me on the Ducks.
Sweet. I like that. And it's important for people not to just bet overs, right? I mean, just looking at season total overs, point player overs, finding some teams that you expect to not do very well. And Carm's looking at the Anaheim Ducks as far as they're under. They're just such a joke defensively. That's the thing, Carm. Like, even in games that they score 2, 3, 4 goals, they might lose by allowing 4 or 5 or 6. That's the problem with them. I kind of have them pegged as an over team. They've got the young talent with Troy Terry, McTavish, with Zegras, but can any of those guys play defense? It's important for forwards to play defense too. And I don't know if those
Yeah.
forwards back check very much, right? They love doing the Michigans and looking good and fancy and stuff, but I'm not sure how much they show up defensively. Jake, man, living the dream. I grew up in California, lived in Colorado for a few years, and now he's living in Barcelona. You got to love that. Jake's living in some cool spots there. Asking about the Avalanche, though, Carmen, I'll tell you what, I really like this team going into this year because they're built just how I like hockey clubs to be built. And when you look at some of the moves that they made before, when they added some players like Casey Middlestat, they've got Kovalenko, Kelly, and Wagner on their fourth line. Of course, top line being Rantanen, McKinnon, Drouin. I think when you look at this team, this is a team that is built the right way. They've got the perfect amount of grinders, physical guys on the fourth and third line. But then, of course, you got the superstars there on the top 6 line that I think that you have to be impressed with. And then, you look at the top six as far as, or the top four defensemen, Makar, Tays, Gerard, and Manson. It's extremely impressive, and I think that they're built, like I said, the right way. Landeskog might be back. The Chushkin, they're welcoming him with warm arms. Hopefully, he has no more issues with everything he's been dealing with. And Lehkonen is supposed to be back. So they're built the right way. I like them, and they're actually a team I think is worth putting a Stanley Cup future on right now, Carm, because I don't think their number is going to get any better than it is right now.
It's tough, Andrew, because you mentioned in each and every year we hear, or each and every year, it's the last couple of years when you were talking about Gabriel Landeskog, and it's tough with with his injury, and misses a complete season, missed most of the season previous to that, and they keep waiting for him to come back, and you just don't know. And then when he comes back, how will he perform? It is tough to return to the NHL after 2 full seasons off an injury and just be the guy who you were 3 years ago. But like you said, there's a wealth of talent on that team, and they're going to compete. I don't think you look at last year, and we were all shocked and surprised by obviously what happened in that opening series where they get blown out in the first game. I think it was against Winnipeg, and everyone was like, Winnipeg's got their number, and then Colorado just ran right over Winnipeg on their way to into the next round, and that was off a season in which. Or the previous year in which they lost, they were upset in the first round of the NHL playoffs by the um, River Ron, or what was no, not River Ron, Raven Ron, Raven
Raven
Ron's
Ron.
favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, did the job on them, beating them in 7 games. So we'll see. Listen, they've got a solid team. They're so tough to beat at home. They're going to drop games at home, of course, but I think every team as a whole, the top teams in the NHL, Andrew, know that they can win on the road. And in the playoffs, sometimes they gear down, in the last couple of weeks, get the guys. John Cooper did it great with the Tampa Bay in their Stanley Cup years, where he geared down in the last month of the season, reduced the minutes for guys like Stamkos and Braden Point, and it helped that team. They were fresh come playoff time, and they had long playoff runs and won back-to-back Stanley Cups. So, with that said, Colorado's a team that can win on the road, so I'm not really worried about them. If they don't have the season everyone expects them to, finish second in the division, they don't care.
Yeah.
They're still going to make a playoff run at the end of the day. But when you talk about the defenseman, Andrew, and that's going to lead into my third play that I want to discuss,
Okay.
is the guy that they traded. They wanted Casey Middlestad from Buffalo to help out, so they traded Bowen Byram to the Buffalo Sabres. Now the Sabres, you look at the changes the Sabres have made this year. Their point total is at 85 and a half. Okay, 85 and a half points. 2 years ago, the Buffalo Sabres 22-23 season finished with 91 points. Missed out on the playoffs by, I believe, 1 point. Last season, 23-24 season, they finished with 84 points. The difference between those two seasons for the Buffalo Sabres, 100% had to be their scoring. The third highest scoring team in the 22-23 season because their power play was clicking. Guys like Skinner, Tage Thompson, they were having great seasons. They bought out Skinner's contract the last 3 years, shipped him out. He's in Edmonton right now. This is
Yeah.
a team that last year went from 3.57 goals per game they were scoring to 2.98. You're not going to win games in the NHL and accumulate points throughout the season when you average 2.98 goals per game unless you're the New York Rangers, unless you're the Carolina Hurricanes, teams that can win 2-1 games, 3-2 games. The Sabres were on the wrong end of those games last year. Do I think they make the playoffs this year? No, but do I think they finish with more than 85 and a half points? I do. And this is, Andrew, where I want to talk to you about something that I am going to track and keep an eye on and talk about on Puck Time. The Sabres are going to be a bit more of a finesse team this year. Getting rid of guys like Skinner is to build that team speed for this team, the defenseman who can move the puck. And Byram is playing like 20 minutes since coming to the Sabres, playing 20 minutes, picked up some points as well too. This team has got to put it together. Tage Thompson, guys like this have to put it together as a team and score goals. They bring in Coach Lindy Ruff this year, and I think marketing wise, guys, bringing in Lindy Ruff is one of the genius moves by the Buffalo Sabres. And I'm going to explain to you really quickly why. The fan base in Buffalo absolutely loves Lindy Ruff. They love him. So, what does that do for the Sabres, Andrew? It buys them another year because they are not going to get on the head coach. They're not going to be this. They were in New Jersey after 2 games or 3 games last year and the year before. Fire Lindy, right? They're not going to do that because they love the guy. So they bought themselves another year.
Good point.
For someone who's betting on them, I don't like that, but I think they get over 85.5 points and still miss the playoffs. I still think they're going to be a ninth or 10th place team because the Detroit Red Wings are ready to take the next step forward. Washington, I believe, takes a step back. The Pittsburgh Penguins can take that next step forward again, too. Someone's going to miss the playoffs that shouldn't be missing the playoffs, but it won't be the Buffalo Sabres. But at 85.5, their point total, I will take it over.
I like it, Carm. Bring in the heat. 3 plays for us here this afternoon. One under. Had to slip in that under with the Ducks going under there with the Devils, of course, and the Sabres over. A good breakdown. I know it's your team, Carm, but you have never, ever been a homer with those guys at all. And I think that when you look at the bottom of the Atlantic Division, as a Habs fan, I was so excited to have a number 2 center finally with Kirby Dach back. And then they get someone he can pass to with Patrick Laine and he gets hurt. They're done. You know, that sucks. I'm going to be hopeful. But it's a battle between the Senators, Sabres, and the Red Wings. And those 3 have actually been rebuilding longer than the Habs anyway. But people like Elliot Friedman and all of these guys that are in Canada, at least, that are the analysts, Carm, they're holding up signs that are saying Ottawa to the playoffs, Ottawa to the playoffs. And then you've got Detroit that's feeling the pressure because they made all these moves. A lot of people said maybe they rushed their rebuild. And then you've got Buffalo. And I'll tell you, my opinion is Buffalo is going to be that pesky team that just bothers teams, that just wins games when no one expects them to win. Like you said, they've got that finesse now. And in this day and age with the NHL, you either have to be a 100% shutdown defenseman or you have to be able to move the puck. Byram does that for you guys, man. And yes, I said you guys because you're a fan. Byram is going to be unbelievable for the Sabres over the next few years. You know, a lot of people talk about the battle between the Panthers, Lightning, Bruins, Leafs. To me, the battle in the Atlantic Division that's going to be the most interesting is going to be the bottom of the division and who's going to take that next step this season. You know, if you were to stack up the Buffalo Sabres and the Red Wings right now, I would take some good plus money on them to be just right there with the Red Wings at the end of the season, where the Red Wings are with as far as the points are concerned. But Carm, I miss talking hockey with you, man. It's been a long time. Why don't you anything you want to say? We'll wrap things up before we close it out.
Yeah, a couple things. You know, you talk about the one last thing about the Sabres, Andrew, is we see it all the time. You know, we see it in every sport, the NFL or what have you, is when a guy finally gets his money, you know what I mean? A goalie gets his money or a player gets his money, like what kind of a season they have. Because, you know, in the last year of their contract, they seem to have their best years. Well, you know, you look at Pekka Luukkonen for the Sabres, 5-year deal. What was it? 23.75 million. 4.75 is his AAV for the Sabres. He gets his contract. They sign former Leafs goalie Reimer to like a 1-year. Devon Levi, whatever we want to call him, is probably going to spend another season in the minors. At 22 years old, he still needs to be better. Didn't have a great start last year. I think he went 10-8-1 this, and an elevated goals against average. Went down to Rochester and he was good down there, 16-6, I think, and under 2 points something. He still needs some seasoning, especially while the Sabres get better defensively in front of their goalies. But when a goalie gets that contract, Andrew, I just always wonder if he's going to have just as good a season. Luukkonen was good last year. He's going to have to be even better this year for this Sabres team. But I would still take Detroit over the Sabres in that one, Andrew. But listen, I'm looking forward to the hockey season with you. For the guys that are watching this now or watching it later on, our segments, we're going to be adding some other segments in, but at least for the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season, there's not going to be like the Friday 6 and 60. I want to see how teams are playing before I put out 6 games on a Saturday that you guys may or may not follow and be putting your hard-earned money on. Let's give it a few weeks. The buy and sell, Andrew, that you will be doing on Mondays, pretty much the same thing. You want to get an idea of how teams are performing. And
I'm thinking week 3.
Take it,
week 3, probably.
We take it from there. We're going to add in a season-long. We're going to fall off quite a few times, but we're going to add a season-long ladder challenge. I'm going to decide how we're going to structure that. And maybe put a charitable spin to it this season. We'll see. And our regular guests, Don Buster, the Prez, Brian Leonard. Looking forward to these guys coming on through the NHL season. We will kick it off on Tuesday, guys. First show will be next Tuesday. We're going to cover all 3 games in the NHL. And then we got full slates of games. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you to everybody for tuning in live here right now. All kinds of you. We've got Russell, we've got Daryl, we've got Nebraska Nose, we've got Jake, Robert, so many of you guys here. So appreciate everybody for joining with us, and looking forward to talking hockey every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern on the Wager Talk channel, which starts next Tuesday. But you can find me here on my McGinnis Picks YouTube channel every single weekday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 3:15. As Aaron said, maybe I'm not starting on time every time, but we're here and we're ready to make some money. Guys, thanks for being here. Make sure you follow Carm on Twitter at Carmine Bianco WT, myself at McGinnis Picks. Until next time, all the best. We'll see you later.